Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. I'm Clint with the Scottish Clans podcast, and I'm excited to share this piece of my conversation with Dr. Martin McGregor and a very unique category of clans that I have dubbed the frontier clans because they didn't already have a better name. Now, some things to look out for with this category and with this topic. One is which clan kicked off the discussion. It's not one that I would usually think would be in this one, but you'll see why we got to talking about it and how that led into this topic of frontier clans. Look for which clans we named as being a part of this group. It is not meant to be an exhaustive list of frontier clans or what I would consider frontier clans. But now, once you get the idea of what we call a frontier clan, which other clans would you think fit into that category? And go ahead and drop those in the list below. If you're descended from one of those clans that you would consider a frontier clan, also put that in the comments below and get that discussion going. And so I'm really excited to hand you over to this conversation. Before I do, make sure if you've got a trip planned to Scotland in the near future that you click that email link below and reach out to Scotland History Tours and make sure Bruce Fumi with Scotland History Tours is a part of that experience. I guarantee you will not regret it. Email them for what options they have for you. Also, if you'd like to contribute to the cause, one-time donation, a reoccurring subscription, big, small, it all helps. So thanks for doing that. You can do that at scottishclans.info. And with that, I'll turn you over to this discussion.
But the fact that he had a seal which bore these emblems, is suggestive of the fact that they certainly didn't forget, where they came from and the clan to which they belonged.
This is that makes me think of a broader clan question. But so these McGregors that were established in Perth, to what degree would they have maintained that? Like Bannerman likes to use the term kin-based society. Would yes. They have continued to participate in that with that geographical dislocation there? They
did. I mean, there's clear evidence about this, and I got very interested in these people, I must say, because they are, it's the kind of thing that you come across in the sources and perhaps didn't expect to find, because it kind of bucks the trend, it bucks the neat boxes that we sometimes fix in our minds, kind of compartmentalizing history as a means of understanding it. But they were kind of going counter to a number of standard narratives, and it was quite clear that they maintained close connections with their kinsfolk not far away to the west in Highland, Perthshire. And one interesting aspect to note about them is that it looks like the first of them who became established seriously in Perth bore the forename, the personal name John in Gaelic, Eoin, and they started to develop them to use the in a Lowland context, in a non-Gaelic context, the surname Johnston, which made sense and kind of pointed to their founder figure, their eponym, as we call them. And so when the prescription came about in 1603, the prescription of the McGregors, and the name itself was actually banned. One could no longer use the surname McGregor. Things were easy for these particular people. They had already, if you like, developed an alternative, which didn't actually, in the eyes of society, I'm sure, obscure the fact that, of their ultimate origin, but it certainly allowed them to continue using that name. There was no name change that was required on their part. So they are a really interesting branch of the McGregors, and I think one could go further. This is an area that hasn't been properly researched, but looking at the towns of late medieval Scotland, the boroughs, as we call them, and looking for the presence of Gaelic speakers, within the makeup of the boroughs, because I don't think that Perth was unique in this regard, or the McGregors were the only ones who were doing this. We've got a chain of boroughs around the kind of what came to be the frontier, if we should call it that, between Highlands and Lowlands, going from your part of the world, Clint, from the Lennox kind of area. We think of Dumbarton as the kind of main place there, round to Stirling, and then round to Perth, round to Inverness. And it'd be an interesting project, I think, to do more research on the kind of Gaelic aspect to these places in the later Middle Ages.
That is fascinating, and it is a very murky I think you're getting into this boundary, like you used the word frontier, and I've actually in my podcast talked about, I started to use the term frontier clans because border clans is already taken.
Yeah.
And you can argue like, about using the word clan or whatever down there, but I mean, but there was a kin-based society on the border, so I thought that one was out. So I had what's a good word for these clans that wherever their base was, whether it was just in the Highlands or just out of the Highlands in the Lowlands, but their territory straddled this boundary,
Yes.
you would have had an interacting of cultures.
Yes.
And Drummonds, Ogilvies,
Yes.
right up along the eastern side. I don't want to stray too far off the topic, but any thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that's a great question to ask. And absolutely, that this is something that's understudied, and I would love to do more on this. I mean, one finds some, what does one call them? It's always difficult. One finds some kindreds, perhaps is an easier word maybe to use, but families always seems to me to be too, it's maybe just not strong enough a term, and I suppose we immediately think of the nuclear family rather than kind of bigger structure. But I mean, one example that I'm very interested in, and it just have not been studied at all, but they come into the McGregor Campbell story. These are the Minguses, and they're interesting in their origins, as was the case with many a significant family in Scottish history. Bruce's and the Stuarts, for example, fit into this. But the Minguses' origins were French, Northern French, and they come over as many of these new Scots did in the 12th and 13th century. This is all kind of happening in the wake of the conquest, basically, and England becomes a kind of jumping off point for people as they sometimes head north. And the Minguses did that, and they got established in the border region first of all. But you find them in late medieval Scotland. They're up in Aberdeen, they're down in the southwest, but the ones that I came across are there in the central Highlands of Scotland in Perthshire. And in that context, they're clearly functioning as a clan, and they're part of Gaelic society. But that's not true of all of the, as it were, branches of the Mingus kindred in this period. So I think there's more to be done on this, and just on the fact that people are able to get around and to function in a way which again perhaps defies the sense of strict boundaries. These McGregors, these Johnsons who go to Perth, they're an example of this as well. The Campbells, of course, themselves are another clan which does this very successfully. We find the Campbells establishing branches over in the east of Scotland, north of the Forth Clyde line, over in Angus, and down in Ayrshire as well, in Robert Burns' country. The Campbells of Lowland are a very, very significant branch of the kindred, and they, just like you were saying about the Johnsons, they maintain connections with, as it were, Campbell headquarters in Argyll. So I think one finds, just a lot of mobility and fluidity going on here, and of course that one has to bear this in mind when one is trying to think about the concept or reality of Highlands and Lowlands in late medieval Scotland.
That same idea came up in my conversation with Ali, that it really is not as tidy as we would like it to be. We want to put everything in their nice little boxes and make it pretty and neat, but it does. That's really going to take you off on some bad conclusions, I think, when studying this.
I think the one of the great problems is it's an iconic feature, I suppose, of the Scottish tourist industry, but the clan map of Scotland. When you have a map which divides the country up into the areas of particular clans, and of course what that does, it's not that doesn't contain elements of truth to it. Of course it does, but the danger is that it makes you believe, or makes you think, that this was set in stone from some unspecified point in the deep past, and that no clan was allowed to transgress its own boundaries, and that no other clan could stray could possibly inhabit the bounds of another. So it's I guess that's the ultimate kind of symbol of the dangers of being too rigid in one's understanding of the society.
I grew up with one of those. I've had one of those, the Scotland of old, since I was since I was a senior in high school, which is longer ago than I'd like to admit. And and I did really have a very compartmentalized idea of how this was all laid out, and then that led me to within the last year, I've done a couple podcast episode, some short YouTube video or two about what a clan map is good for and what it's not good for.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And I would love, if you ever had a chance, I'd love to have you sharpshoot that and say like, yeah, you're close, Clint.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Now that you know what a frontier clan is, do you descend from a frontier clan? Do you have any connections to one? Do you know anybody who does? And if so, well, that was pretty cool. My dog just scared up some pheasants. He's a goer. Well, a lot of people, when they ask for people to like and subscribe to the channel, they do it at the beginning of the video, which doesn't make any sense to me, especially if you're a first-time watcher and you don't even know if you're going to like it or not. But if you made it this far, I hope you got some good value out of it. So go ahead and click like and subscribe. Now, now that you know what a frontier clan is, descend from any of those frontier clans, go ahead and drop which one in the links below, in the comments below. Also, which clans do you wish I had included on my list? Once again, it was not meant to be a comprehensive list, but it kind of enough to get you the idea of what we mean by a frontier clan. It's a really interesting topic, deserves a lot more study than it's had. And so maybe there's your new idea for your master's or doctoral thesis. No charge for that. You're welcome. And until the next video, Martin Lev and Drasta.